Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video. My name is DeSantis. This week's video is going to be about why you feel inadequate. And I know for a lot of us growing up and coming from a religious community, and even if you don't sometimes, but one of the symptoms of religious trauma is actually feeling inadequate and incapable for most things. And there's actually a reason for that. And when I found out that there was a reason I felt inadequate, I was like, did I cry for weeks? Yes. But it is something very useful to know, because if you find yourself constantly feeling stuck where you are in life and incapable of breaking past a barrier that you wish you could get past, and those feelings of always not being good enough and being inadequate and being fearful and being afraid that you're going to get found out, if you grew up in a really traumatic environment, or especially a religiously traumatic environment, that's the reason that you feel those things. So I want to talk about that a little bit in this video. And I remembered this time. So please click like and subscribe. And I also have a community board where you guys can go, and I love talking with you and hearing from you. And this video is a product of a conversation that we had on there. So I will see you there, hopefully. But let's just start with wherever you are. And I know that if you clicked this video and you were here, then it hit something in you, and it does resonate with something inside of you. And so it was incredible for me when I found out that there are people who go through life not feeling inadequate. I did not know that was a possibility, that you could go through your life not feeling really, on a cellular level, just terrible about yourself and just feeling like you're horrible. And the more that I get into what religious trauma does and CPTSD and trauma work and healing and stuff like that, that's when all the dots started to all connect, and I started to understand that the feelings that you have when you're growing up in a traumatic environment and the way that your brain gets set up is different from people who grow up in a healthy environment and the way that their brains are set up. So I would see people who would say things like, I'm going to get my real estate license. And I would be like, what do you mean? Don't you have to commit and study, and don't you have to commit the rest of your life? And they would be like, no, I'm going to try it for a few years, and if I don't like it, I'm not going to do it. And that to me was just the craziest thing. Or I would talk to people and they would say, well, I'm going to study this, or I'm going to go to school, or I'm going to try this new job, I'm going to ask for a raise or apply for a promotion. And it's little things like that that allow you to elevate in life. And for me, even hearing them say that would put me into a contracted state of a panic of wait, what if they say no, you can't have the raise? Or what if you fail the test for the real estate agent? And the thought that you were trying to be more was super triggering for me, because I felt deeply unworthy and incapable because of how my brain was set up. So I want to talk about the setup, and maybe you find something in here that's useful for you. But basically, when you are a child, there are certain things that your brain is set up for, and there are certain things that it's not. And as a child, you're a sponge, right? And you should be having the experiences that make sense for your age. So, you should be learning how to read. You should be learning how to write. You should be outside playing in nature and absorbing new experience. What you should not be doing as a child is de-escalating adults who are mad at you, receiving physical beatings, being told that there is a universal God who watches every little thing that you do and who might send your whole family to hell if you do anything wrong, and stuff like that. So a lot of us who grew up in religious trauma or trauma were forced to try and absorb adult experiences in our child brain. And our child brain was not set up for an adult experience. So we know the feeling of what it's like to be incapable. Because as an 8-year-old, I was incapable of stopping my abuse. So all I know, my body recognizes and my brain recognizes when I'm incapable of doing something, and I feel overwhelmed and scared, and I freeze, and I cannot escape a terrible thing that is happening to me. That memory is in my body and my brain. So when I try to do something as an adult, and I'm trying to, say, apply for a promotion, or I'm trying to apply for a job that I don't know yet. I don't know all the ins and outs. When I apply for that and they say, okay, we're going to test you, what I remember is feeling incapable and feeling afraid and being frozen and not being able to stop it. So then I'll get to this, the real estate test, for example, and if there's a question I don't know, my body remembers that contracted, terrified state from when I was younger and I was really incapable and fearful, and it completely locks me down. And as an adult, in a completely new situation, I cannot function. And that is because my brain and my body remembers actually being incapable and fearful and having something terrible happen to me. So I think it's really important to know that something from your past can affect you now as an adult, because your body and your brain hold the memory of that. And it is very difficult. It's very difficult if you haven't worked through the past trauma to bring yourself where you are now to function as an adult, and especially to expand in your life. And for me, when I'm trying to function as an adult and I'm trying to expand myself and find new challenges, I always have to remind myself that I'm in a different place now. And when I'm trying to test out for something, and I've done this a lot of times in my life, I always have to take a moment before I step into the room or before I open the test or anything like that, to remind myself that I'm not where I was. Nothing bad is going to happen if I fail this test, or nothing bad is going to happen if I don't get this job or if I don't get this raise. At this point in my life, everything that happens to me is more information, and it's useful to know if I need to study more, or if, this job doesn't value me as much, and if they say no to me for a raise. That's all valuable information for me to know. But if I can't get past the childhood trauma and work past that memory in my brain, I will never apply for the job. I will never apply for the promotion. I will never ask for a raise. I will never try and make new friends or step into challenging situations, because there is a very unpleasant and horrible memory that is locked in my body, where I remember being incapable, being really fearful, not being good enough to stop the abuse, or not being, smart enough to talk somebody down from abusing me, not being able to handle, a fully grown adult male beating me because I had done something wrong. And those memories are so violent, and your body receives them and locks them up and keeps them with you always present, because it's afraid of it happening again. And so it can bring it up when you try and find challenging situations to step into, because your body and your brain wants to keep you safe, and that's actually a very loving thing. But how it shows up is it can show up as you freezing and locking down and just completely shutting down when you're in a situation where you feel slightly afraid, or you feel it's slightly uncommon to what you're used to. So you completely freeze and you lock down. And I just want to share that, because so many of us can feel like we're spinning our wheels, like our life isn't progressing, and we want it to progress, but we cannot make it progress. And we're trying and we're pushing and we're doing the things, but we might always hit this barrier where we feel like we're so inadequate. We're so inadequate. And the thought that you're enough, you can't even think that thought. For me, I couldn't even think that thought. And it's because all of the cells in your body fight you when you try to have that thought. When you try and think, maybe I'm capable enough to do this, everything in your body fights you. And if you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. And it's that moment where you wish you could do this thing, but you actually physically, you physically can't. You're completely locked down and you're frozen. And I just wanted to talk about it because I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it, but there is really a reason. There's a reason that we spin our wheels. There's a reason that we can't progress past a certain point. And the way to remedy that, and the way to, quote, fix it, is to bring yourself into presence. And that's such an esoteric thing to say, and I understand that there are not steps, because the steps that you will take will be different than the steps that I have taken. and the steps that everyone else has taken. But there's something that you need to do for yourself to remind you who you are now, where you are now, and just remind yourself that that situation is not going to happen again. And you are no longer incapable. You no longer need to feel so afraid. And this situation is a completely different situation than what you remember. And this is why I think it's so important to do trauma work, emotional work, meditation, everything. There's not one tool that's like the fix-it tool. It takes everything, because you need to come back here. You need to come back to your body. You need to come back through the experiences that maybe locked something in your body, and you need to unlock it and remind yourself that you're here now. You're an adult version of you. And this version of you is different from the child that was incapable of stopping the thing that was forced upon you. And sometimes for us it was violence, sometimes it was a mindset, sometimes it was, the belief that God is always watching you and is going to send your family to hell is terrible. It's a terrible burden for a child's brain. The child's brain doesn't understand it, but sometimes it gets locked in, and I'm sure that you have experienced the adults. That's like a 60-year-old person, but they still have that like 5-year-old belief that if they do anything wrong, them and their family are going to hell. So that adult is a very reactionary adult, because there was a memory locked into their brain and into their body a long time ago. They never worked through it because they never changed their belief, and that's still stuck. And I'm sure that we all know people like that. The people who aggressively get angry when you smoke, or you wear pants, or you have a drink, because their childhood brain couldn't understand this, and they never did the work to undo that because they never changed their belief. But if you are where you are now, and there is something in you that feels stuck, and you wish that you could do things, but you find yourself feeling inadequate a lot, I just want you to know that there is a reason for that. And it was how your childhood brain was developed, and it was something that was forced upon you, whether it was a belief or an experience, and you felt rightfully inadequate. Rightfully inadequate. As a 5-year-old, I'm not supposed to de-escalate, 30-year-old men who are mad at me. As a child, I'm not supposed to be in charge about whether or not my sibling goes to hell. That I felt inadequate, and because I was. But in this moment, with who I am now, when I have thoughts of inadequacy, I know where they're coming from, and I no longer need to believe them. And that is the difference between being locked in a childhood memory, or something that your brain cannot fathom, and then bringing yourself here and being the adult you, and understanding all of your facilities and your capabilities now, because there are a lot. If you have brought yourself here, you've worked your way through these videos or whatever it is, you are capable. And so when there is a thought of inadequacy, it's important to be able to pinpoint where it came from and say, thank you, goodbye. I understand that you're trying to keep me safe, but I'm a different person now, and I no longer need to believe that I'm inadequate. So you can let that thought go. And if you're here, you can learn. There's new information that you can take in. You can always learn. That is a true factual statement. You have the ability to learn. And when you feel inadequate, it's important to remind yourself of that. You can learn. So if you don't know something, you can just say, I don't know that yet. But you can learn it. And that for me has been a really big, the beginning of the unlock of all of that stuff that was stuck inside of me. I felt so incapable. But when I started just to repeat to myself, I'm no longer incapable, and I have the ability to learn, that began to churn the wheels a little bit. And I started to be able to build myself up to where now I can be this person. And there is nothing really that scares me that much. I say that much because there are still things that scare me. But I have kind of the workaround. I know that those feelings of inadequacy are going to come up, but I know where they come from. And I can say thank you, goodbye. I am good enough, and I know how to learn. So maybe I don't know something, but that's just because I don't know it yet. And so I invite you, if you have struggled with feelings of inadequacy and feelings of not being good enough, there's a reason for that. So Jump into the comments, talk about it, or take yourself to therapy and talk about it, or journal about it and talk to yourself about it. But there's a reason that you feel the way you do. And I hope that this video was helpful to help you understand yourself a little bit better, because there's nothing wrong with you. And I know that if you grew up in a religiously abusive environment, you will think there's something wrong with you. But there's nothing wrong with you. There's a reason you feel what you feel, and there is a way to move past feelings of inadequacy. So I hope that this was helpful. Keep on working on yourself. Keep on investing in yourself. You absolutely, unquestioningly are a worthy investment. So thank you for being here, and I will see you all next time.